There is a part in every royal family story that is very hard to fathom if you've never lived it. There is a survival story behind every human walking behind a crown. Sometimes it's benign, other times it's dangerous, yes. Sometimes that story of mere survival can be very dangerous. Was it designed to be that way? Or can a man decide to choose that path? Do you know when a man becomes dangerous? Not when he is given power, but when he realizes he was never meant to have it. My name is Alexander. I was my brother's spare and now his son's spare. My life did not change in exile. It changed long before that, in a corridor no one remembers. But one I have never forgotten. My brother walked ahead. He was always ahead, not by distance, but by attention. They spoke to him, guided him, corrected him. Every word he said mattered. Every silence he held was observed, and I walked beside it, not within it, beside it. I slowed my steps once, just to see if anyone would notice. They did not. That is the first lesson of the spare. You are present, but you are not required. Nobody sees you. You are not needed. And when a child learns that early enough, something begins to form, not loudly, not immediately, but steadily. I took notice. I began to watch. That was my place, not to speak, not to lead, to observe, to understand what it meant to be chosen, and what it meant not to be. I remember a room, quiet, important. My brother stood ready, certain. They asked him a question, he answered carefully, correctly. They nodded, they approved, they saw the future, and then their eyes moved, not to me, past me, as if I had already been accounted for, as if my life had already been decided. That is when I understood something. I was never meant to understand so early. I was not being prepared, I was being placed, and placement is a quiet kind of imprisonment because it does not force you. It defines you. It tells you who you are, without ever saying it aloud. The air is shaped, the spare is settled, and in that silence, ambition is born, not from desire, but from absence, from the slow realization that your life is unfolding without your participation. I did not hate him, not then, how could I? He had done nothing, except be chosen. But I began to see him differently, not as my brother, but as the answer to a question I was never allowed to ask, and something in me shifted. I became quieter, more careful, more aware, not weaker, wiser. I doubted, because when you are not being shaped, you are learning how the shaping works. Years passed. The difference between us became undeniable. He was the future. I was the remainder. He was expected. I was accommodated. He was necessary. I was just there. And then one day, I stopped trying to be seen. That is when it truly began. Because when a man stops asking for recognition, he begins to define himself not by what he is given, but by what he understands. I began to understand the crown not as an object, but as a system, a structure that rewards alignment and removes disruption. And I knew, without being told, that I was disruption. Not because I resisted, but because I did not fit in systems like that. Do not adjust. They remove. You already know how that part ends. But this is where it began. In corridors, in rooms, in silences, in moments so small. They were never meant to matter, but they did, because they shaped me. They taught me something. The air will never be allowed to learn how to exist without being needed. And once you learn that, you become something else entirely. Because a man who is not needed is a man who cannot be controlled in the same way. They still call me the spare, as if the word still defines me. But I have lived too long beyond it to believe that. Because I understand now, the spare is not the absence of power. He is the beginning of something else. Something they will only recognize when it is too late. Do you know when a man becomes dangerous? It is not when he is given power. It is when he decides he no longer needs permission. This is the Prodigal Spare. A novel written by A.D. Hallis.